interwebs, I hope you are all doing well because it is time to do one of my favorite things in the world, and that is talk about yet another Star Trek novel. This one, the latest novel by one David Mack, a Star Trek Strange New World novel titled Ring of Fire. Okay, we're just gonna move on from that. Sorry, thank you for indulging me that lame joke. I had to do it, it was a little bit too obvious. But to actually talk about this book, I was really excited about this one because I generally really enjoy David Mack's work. In fact, his last Star Trek novel that he did that I have right here was Star Trek Picard Firewall, which I thought was an excellent novel. It was a look at Seven of Nine's journey between the end of Star Trek Voyager into where we see her with the Fenris Rangers in Star Trek Picard. And I thought he did, especially for a straight cis guy, and I interviewed him about this, so he's okay, I think, with me saying this, but for a straight cis guy, writing a very queer story for Seven of Nine that wasn't, tokenizing or falling into tropes, and actually delved into not only Seven of Nine, but the Fenris Rangers as an anarchistic group. And I really liked those two meshing of exploring Seven of Nine's identity, both as a queer person and as someone trying to find her own identity post Voyager, and matching that up with the sort of anarchistic leanings of something like the Fenris Rangers. So I think David Mack is a really great writer and one of my favorites amongst the many great writers that are writing Star Trek right now. And then on top of that, I generally look forward to books set in Star Trek shows that I personally am a little bit more disappointed with. I mean, Star Trek Picard is one of them. I don't really love Star Trek Picard, the show. There's a couple things I like about it, but generally speaking, I've been disappointed with that series just overall over its 3 seasons. And if any of you have watched my latest review of Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 3 over my main channel, Strange New Worlds is sadly, as it goes further and further along, kind of falling into that same space for me. And I have always found that the novels are almost always able to explore the aspects that I really like about these Star Trek shows and delve a little bit deeper and draw out things that I really like. Again, if you have not read some of the Star Trek Picard novels, they are almost to a T fantastic, and some of my favorite tie-in science fiction generally, some of my favorite science fiction novels generally, which is especially the Una McCormack ones. And I say that with high praise. I mean, you can see my shelf, I read a lot of novels, so I know tie-in fiction sometimes gets disparaged, but I really do think the Star Trek Picard novels are almost to a T fantastic, including Firewall. And so with the Strange New Worlds novels, again, especially one by Una McCormack, but really all of these novels that have come out by numerous writers over the past couple of years, I've really liked and have felt like they've drawn out a lot of the stuff that I liked about Strange New Worlds and the potential of that show that I think has been left kind of on the table, especially in seasons 3 and a little bit in season 2. I say all that to say, though, is that with Ring of Fire, I actually found myself struggling a little bit more with it, especially towards the beginning of the book. It managed to, by the latter half of the novel, bring me back in, and I think did some really cool stuff, some really clever sci-fi stuff that I really liked, as well as some pretty decent character work, especially around the character of Captain Pike, who I thought was a little bit let down over the past 2 seasons, and especially in season 3, but it really took a little bit of time to get there. This story revolves around a mysterious station that is set up over the accretion disk of a black hole. And I am obsessed with black holes. I love reading. I sometimes fall asleep to physics books about black holes. Black holes are just inherently cool. So setting something there, I'm really down for. And on that station, some murders start happening, and the Enterprise is called in to investigate and be sort of a third party to look into why these murders and sabotage of the station are happening, but at the same time, the person running the station is trying to hide the actual mission of what the station's there to do. So it's a little bit of a double mystery going on. That's a really great setup, and there's also a really cool tie-in to an element of Pike's past before he became captain of the Enterprise that makes this particular mission also really personal to him. So all of that I think is really good. Great mystery, great setup, great character work that is going on here. But even within that, I still found myself a little bit frustrated. And to be fair to the novel, it is not entirely its fault. And that's because this novel is set during season 3 of Strange New Worlds, which, for an episodic series is, not a big deal. This book is actually set in particular in between the episodes The Sailor Who Ate Its Tail and What is Starfleet. However, season 3 did a lot of things that I was really, really frustrated with, most notably its romance storylines. In particular, as it plays into this novel, the romance story between Spock and La'an. I've been very clear that I did not like that romance. I thought it was really forced, and I just found generally the whole season's focus on these romance plot lines, these very forced romance plot lines, very teenager-esque, like CW level romances, to be very, very frustrating. And unfortunately, while we do get a couple nods to some of the other romances like Pike and Patel's stuff going on this season, the real highlight for Spock's character arc and La'an's character arc is their focus on their romance, as well as Spock's mixed emotions about Chapel being brought up as well. And I just find that to be really, really tired. So the fact that, 3 of the main characters of this story, while also taking part in the larger mystery, like obviously La'an and Spock and Chapel all have their duties within the larger mystery, especially La'an being sort of the head investigator, I just was sort of frustrated that the character stuff was focused in on them. That being said, and I will give David Mack credit for this, again, it's not entirely his fault that he sort of has to set the story there. I'm sure he was given that duty as a writer. It's like, hey, you're writing a Star Trek tie-in novel, we want to tie into season 3, this is what you're going to write. So I don't entirely blame him, and to his credit, I think he probably delivers the best type of that story that we got within the setting of season 3 of Strange New Worlds. Like, there's actually some decent stuff here between these characters that feels, for the most part, pretty mature. Unlike the show, which felt, again, very CW teenager style of drama. Which, again, I'm not knocking. I don't mind teen drama, but it's not what I come to Strange New Worlds with full adult characters for. Maybe Starfleet Academy will be great for that, but Strange New Worlds, it just feels weird. And this actually does feel like there's some adult moments in here. There is some stuff that does fall into tropey elements that I don't particularly like, such as the guy getting overly emotional at a particular moment and trying to defend the girl, the sort of like, he goes too far in defending the girl kind of moment. And I won't spoil exactly how that happens, but obviously it is a trope. So that part of the story I didn't really like. The other thing that I struggled with in the start of this book is that as we get to the station and the mystery starts being investigated, everyone, both on the station and kind of on the Enterprise crew to a degree as well, are somewhat assholes to each other. Like, everyone kind of treats each other like a dick, including La'an, who, she's always a bit standoffish, but even Spock and Una to a degree, and even Pike at a couple moments, are sort of dicks. And while the story does later on justify why the head of this station is playing her cards so close to the vest, it did leave me very frustrated at the top of the story, being like, look, she's the one who called the Enterprise in, and yet she's automatically being like such a huge jerk to everyone. And even looking back on the book, having finished this and learned the end mystery that is revealed in this book, I do feel like some of that assholishness, for lack of a better word, was played up a little bit too much in a way that I just found a little bit frustrating to watch, or to read, I should say, in the novel. There's also a couple weird moments where, like, Pike has these modern-day aphorisms that just kind of threw me out in a way that I didn't really love. Like, at one point, Pike's talking to the head of the station, and, he's frustrated with her, and he's like, hey, you can tell me, it's just one of us, just between us girls. I mean, it's not, like, super sexist or anything. It's meant to be, like, a bit disparaging. Like, he's kind of annoyed with her at that point. But it has, like, this gendered edge to it that I didn't love, and it also just felt like, not like something Pike would say. It didn't feel like a Pike sort of statement. And so just moments like that kind of threw me here and there a little bit in the story that just kind of tossed me out. All that being said, I'm being very negative on the book, and I did end up liking it. And so I will talk about that in just a second. But to just kind of discuss one more storyline that I both liked and didn't. There's a kind of fun storyline between Scotty and Pelia. And on the one hand, I really liked the story because it involves sort of Pelia kind of teasing and playing and messing with Scotty in a way that's kind of trying to get him to learn, to grow into that like miracle worker that we know Scotty will eventually be. And that was actually some of my favorite stuff for Pelia and Scotty in season 3 of Strange New Worlds. I really loved that sort of mentorship role that she kind of gave to Scotty, especially in the season premiere of season 3, Hegemony Part 2. And there's a couple other little brief moments of that throughout the season. And I like her in that role a lot more than what she mainly had been used for throughout season 3, which is the sort of like Bathos-like Marvel-esque humor where she sort of undercuts the drama going on. I found that to be frankly very annoying. And I liked Pelia, especially in season 2, where she's kind of like a more comedic version of Guinan, right? Where she can be a kind of teacher, she can sort of help be a guide, but she's a little less sort of serious and mysterious as Guinan was in The Next Generation. Like, she's a little bit more down-to-earth, a little bit more human, for lack of a better word, a little bit more funny in that Carol Kane kind of way, but still can kind of bring that mentor energy when she needs to. And she didn't have that as much in season 3, and that's kind of here. There's this really funny sort of like dynamic where she challenges Scotty to a pepper contest, like eating peppers to kind of like show him up a little bit. And I found that to be very, very funny. And it does kind of fit that role for her. However, it does come up a couple times in moments that feel a little bit inopportune or inappropriate. Like they're dealing with a murder mystery, people are dead, and then Pelia is like, let's do a pepper eating contest, Scotty. So that just felt a little bit weird. And it does, again, kind of turn over, especially in the middle of the story, into coming across a little bit more mean-spirited than I think it was intended to. Like, I think the story was meant to bring this comedic relief bit to the book, and it does at the start, but there's these moments in the middle where I'm like, this feels a little bit more mean-spirited of Pelia than I think the story intended it to. And it kind of led to a kind of tonal mismatch that kind of bothered me. And I think that that's just kind of the running theme of the early part of this book that frustrated me, was that there's just a little bit of a tonal mismatch between, I think, what the book was going for and ultimately what kind of came across. Is everyone's a little bit more of a dick than I think that the book means them to be, and everyone's a little bit more mean-spirited than I think the book means them to be. And as a result, it just kind of pushed me out a little bit. All that being said, finally to get to positives, because I know I'm being overly critical of this book, I think the way this book ends was really, really cool. The mystery and what is ultimately revealed to be going on behind the scenes of this station, I thought was a really clever idea. I don't want to spoil for you because it is kind of fun to learn what's going on, and there are multiple layers of things going on too, as I'll touch upon in a second. But just learning that was just really cool. Some of the ideas brought up here I thought was really, really fun. Again, tied into some black hole stuff that I really thought was cool, especially the fact that it was dealing with the accretion disk of a black hole. A lot of times when we think about black holes, we think about like, oh, their event horizon. Like, you go past the event horizon and you're never going to get back out. Like, you're sucked into the singularity of the black hole. But we don't really think about the accretion disks that are going around, of the light that is sort of like, as the black hole spins, the light goes around, that it's sort of like trapped in its orbit around it. It's dangerous shit, like star stuff just spinning really fast around a black hole in a very flat plane. And I thought that was just a very cool way to use a black hole that I haven't really seen in any type of story before. You know, I've seen Interstellar, I've seen a bunch of other stories use black holes. This was doing something different. And I thought that that was relatively fresh and new. And then the other added mysteries on top of it was really cool. And also the way that we get explained what's going on with the sabotage and murders on the station is also really interesting, because there's a couple, without spoiling too much, a couple different competing agendas going on in this story, and how they get revealed is very, very fun in a very Star Trek-y, the original series kind of way. And I thought that was just a really, really fun time that we don't get to see as much even in Strange New Worlds, and kind of playing up that we're in the era of the original series, and like the original series show did some weird stuff every once in a while, and was dealing with sort of Cold War elements and a couple other things going on. So I think the book has a kind of a rougher start. It's not a bad start, but it's a little bit rougher than I've generally found David Mack's writing to be. But it does pull it back at the end and come up with some really cool, really fun ideas that I think are rather unique. and I haven't even really seen as much even in the Star Trek novels that I really, really love. And I think he is very, very clever in doing something really fun and new and using science in a really cool way, and does ultimately deliver on the character arcs that he does set up, especially for Pike. I think he does a really great job there, especially with some of the secondary characters that he introduced, like the head of the station. I think has a really cool reveal and arc with what's going on with her. So I think she gets some good stuff. And again, I will reiterate it. While I don't love it, I don't love the sort of romance stuff and the sort of love triangle things going on, especially with the character of Spock as it relates to season 3. I will give David Mack credit and say that he did the best version of that kind of character arc triangle love thing that season 3 was trying to do that I saw. If I had to pick, like, looking at all of season 3 and this novel, and say, okay, what was the best, like, romance plot line that you liked the most from that season, I would have to go with this book. So he's doing the best with a thing that I don't like. So I will give him some credit for that, even if I do end up not being totally in love with it. So Ring of Fire, book that I ended up really, really liking. Do think it's a little bit rougher towards the top of the novel, but once you get into the latter half, it just goes, and I think really delivers and leaves me coming away from the book feeling very, very satisfied than if it had sort of, started strong and ended in a much more rougher way. Like, I think it really just gets there in the end in a way that I really like. So that is my review of Star Trek Strange New Worlds Ring of Fire. What did you think about it, though? Have you read the book? I'd love to hear all your comments down below. But beyond all that, I hope you, my friends, live long and prosper.